Good morning.
Good morning.
As you probably noticed on the top of the bulletin, it says the theme for this day is Restore Us, O God, that we wonder. And I was realizing, as I thought about that this week, that there are at least two major senses to the idea of wonder. And one of them is to sort of wonder about things, to ponder and to think. And my guess is that as a church, we're generally pretty good at that. I wonder what happens if we take this wire and attach it to this wire, right? Oh, okay, well now we know. Right? Or I wonder what happens in my math formula if I change this number, or if I think about things this way. This last week in leadership team, I presented a whole bunch of wonderings to the leadership team. I said, well, I wonder what would happen if we did this, or I wonder what happened if I did that. And most of the time their response was the same. Well, you just have to try and see what happens. So I think as a group, we're pretty good at that sort of wondering. Another sense of wondering is to think about wonder and awe. To stand in front of mystery, or to stand and have a mountaintop experience, and to experience God in this truly wonderful way. And I suspect we're not quite as good at that. That we're not people who regularly get overwhelmed by emotions and get overwhelmed by the presence of God. Dave, in his opening today, quoted from hymn number 502, I ask no dream, no prophet ecstasy, no sudden rendering of the veil of clay. You don't? I do. Wouldn't that be great? At least once in a while? To have those experiences where you absolutely know the presence of God, that there is no doubt that you are overwhelmed by this. So I guess I do. But one of the interesting things about the first scripture that was read this morning is that this is the call of Abraham. And you would think this would be one of those experiences, right? God spoke to Abraham, right? How cool would that be? But when you read the stories of Abraham in Genesis, it's amazing how little wonder there is, how little awe there is. It's all very ordinary. God comes to Abraham and goes, hey, Abe. Abe goes, hey, Big G, how's it going? Right? And they just sort of keep on going. And there's no flash in the sky. It's just like very plain. But clearly there are many times in Scripture where people experience God in these awe and wonder sorts of ways. But instead of me telling you, I want you to tell me, right? As you remember the story of the Bible, what are these great stories you remember of God's great appearances to people? Paul on the road to Damascus, right? Paul's just riding down the road and all of a sudden, boom, there's Jesus, and he falls off his horse. Right?
With wrestling with Elijah?
No, I think that was Jacob. Yeah, wrestling with the angel. Uh-huh.
A burning bush.
A burning bush, right? Moses has lots of these experiences. Mm-hmm. All right. Any others?
Mentioned generally the Ten Commandments.
Right, so Moses goes up on the mountain and sees God face to face. So there are those, right? And right, some of these are literal mountaintop experiences, and some of them are metaphoric. Right? So I don't know, do you think, when you think about the Bible, can you think about mountains? Are there mountains that you remember from the Bible? Pardon me?
Sermon on the Mount.
Sermon on the Mount, good.
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai, right? For, Elijah on Mount Carmel. The temple is on a mount. Right? Jerusalem is in some ways on a mountain. It's surrounded by higher mountains, so it's a bit of a claustrophobic mountain. But well, I was doing some research on that this week and realized that the topography around Jerusalem is a lot like it is around here. These mountains and hills and valleys. So lots and lots of mountains, both metaphoric and literal. And of course, we read the story of Jesus. Jesus goes up on a mountain and meets Moses and Elijah. But one of the interesting things about that story is that it's not, that event is really, I don't think it's for Jesus. Right? I mean, because he's Jesus, right? What does he need a mountaintop experience for, right? Does God need mountaintop experiences to meet God? You know, it's like, no, he doesn't need this, right? And does he need some little advice from Moses? I mean, part of it is we don't know what they were talking about. Right? But the way the story is told, the event clearly seems to be for the disciples. So the last verse, Jesus says, don't tell anybody till after I've risen. But the point is, tell people after I've risen. Right? Tell a lot of people. Because one of the things about mountaintop experiences is that some of us don't have them. Most of us don't have them. And so we are sustained by other people's experiences. Probably the most famous modern example of that is Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech. I have been to the mountaintop and I have seen the promised land. And he's been to the mountaintop, and he's seen the promised land, but how many millions of people have been sustained by his vision? Even though we weren't on the mountaintop and we haven't seen the promised land, right? The fact that other people have these experiences sustain us as well. Because that's what these things are for, in a lot of ways. Right? They're important experiences because they sustain us in other times. Right? That when we're in the valley of despair, we remember the mountaintops, or we hear other people's stories of those. Or even just in our ordinary walk of life. Life goes on and it sort of is routine and it just is the way it is. But once in a while, right, it's good to remember. It's good to remember those great and grand experiences. And so we read the stories in scriptures and we hear the stories, maybe even from one another. So we can read about them in other places as well. So these sustain us. But I think it's still worth also desiring them for ourselves. And not just desiring them for ourselves, but working for them, trying to get there, even if we never will succeed. And there is certainly no guaranteed way. It's not like, here's the 10 steps, and then you'll have a revelation of God. It can't be done. And we know from example from Paul's Damascus Road experience that sometimes they come totally without preparation. In fact, Paul's sort of been anti-preparing for an encounter with Jesus because he doesn't think this is even a possibility. And so he's not at all expecting this. He isn't prepared for this in any way. But I still think preparation is a possibility. And I think there are things we can do to anti-prepare. Right? So for example, it would be quite easy to come up with a list of 10 things to do to make sure you probably never have a mountaintop experience. Right? Never ever slow down. Just keep running through life as fast as you possibly can. Never ever contemplate mystery and wonder. Don't just sort of, become really, really cynical about pretty much everything. That is a good way to avoid a mountaintop experience. Always try to take everything apart that you see and never let it be beautiful, right? So if you see a beautiful flower, start plucking it right away. Try to figure out how it got to be beautiful, and then you end up with a mess on the floor. Well, see, it wasn't very beautiful after all. So there's certainly lots of things we can do to at least minimize the possibility of having one. So, in a lot of ways, the simplest thing to do, if you actually would like to have one of these, is to do just the opposite of those things you were going to do to minimize it. So take time. Take time just to wait. And get yourself ready. And work on the cynicism that's inside of you. And work on the doubt and the fear and the pain. And open yourself up to the possibility that God still reveals God's self to people. And get away. Because, you know, the ordinary stuff traps us sometimes. Just with ordinary, regular stuff, and we get so caught up in it, even if we're not busy, it's just ordinary. So take time away. One of the nice things about this area is that getting away is pretty easy. Right? There's just lots of places within a quarter mile, within a half a mile here, where it just feels like you're in the middle of nowhere, even though you're in the middle of the city. And you don't have to drive very far out, and suddenly it feels like the middle of nowhere. And the mountaintops, right? I mean, I grew up on the prairies. Mountaintop was always an abstract. Right? Because mountaintop was a 9-hour drive. And here, getting away is easy. So so I think there are things that we can do to at least increase the possibility of those. But really, for most of us, life is just going to go on. And that's okay. That's just the way things are. But again, it's worth telling these stories. It's worth telling these stories because we do get caught up in the ordinary. And we do sometimes forget about the presence of God. We sometimes forget about the God of wonder and awe and majesty and power because we get caught up in, well, I got to clean this, and I got to cook that, and I got to drive here, and I got to do that. And this needs fixing, and that needs fixing. And those are all things that need to be done. But somehow, in all of that, God is. Isn't that great? I mean, even in the ordinary. It's not like God is, certainly many people's throughout history, right, thought that God lived on the mountaintop. Right? God lives on top of Mount Sinai, and you can go up there to meet God if you're holy enough, and then you will, and then you come back down and things are a mess down here, but we can go back up to the mountaintop, right? And that's not the God we worship. We worship the God who's here, right here, and also this afternoon, not just like Sunday morning. And also tomorrow, whatever it is you're doing tomorrow, we worship the God who is there. So we tell the stories, and we remember, and we go on. And we sing. Hymn number 299.